Hello everyone. Today we are going to start a new topic in pharmacology, and this topic is the autonomic nervous system. This is a very important topic in pharmacology, and I will do my best to make it simple as much as possible. So let's get started. First, to know how our nervous system is divided, we first should study something that is called the reflex arc. So this is here we have a cross section of our spinal cord, and here is our hand. What would happen if our hand touched something that is a hot object or a painful stimulus? What would happen so that we can or our hand move away from this object? First, when we touch this something that is hot or painful, there is a signal that is carried from our hand into the spinal cord. And this signal is carried through a nerve. And this nerve is called the sensory nerve. This is the nerve that senses that there is something uh, that is being touched by our hand. And also we call this sensory nerve, we also call it efferent nerve. So this sensory nerve or afferent nerve carried the signal from our hand to our spinal cord. Okay, then a signal is carried away from our spinal cord to the skeletal muscles in our hand, and this would be transferred or carried through a nerve called motor nerve. Okay, also we call this motor nerve efferent nerve. So we have sensory nerve or afferent nerve that carried the signal from the outside or from our hand to the spinal cord, and there is a nerve that's called motor nerve or efferent nerve that carried the signal from the spinal cord into or to the skeletal muscles in our hand. And when the signal reaches our skeletal muscle in our hand, it contracts it so our hand moves away from this painful or hot object. Okay, so we have sensory nerve and we have motor nerve, and this spinal cord with the brain, they also have nerves inside. Okay, and we can consider this spinal cord with the brain as they are the center. Okay, and there are nerves that comes to the center and there are nerves that comes out from the center. Sensory nerve carry the signal from the outside or the hand to the central, and from the center the motor nerve carries the signal again to the hand. Okay, so the sensory nerve goes to the center and the motor nerve goes away from the center. Okay, and we can classify or divide the nervous system into central part or central nervous system or CNS, and this is the nerves in the brain and the spinal cord, and we have the peripheral part of the nervous system. And as we can see, we can divide this peripheral part into sensory part and motor part. So we have sensory nervous system and motor nervous system. Okay, but the motor nerve here supplied or innervated skeletal muscle. Okay, skeletal muscle is voluntary organ. We can contract our skeletal muscle if we want, so it is voluntary. But this motor or efferent nerve could supply an organ such as heart or gastrointestinal tract or eye or blood vessels. These organs are involuntary organs. Okay, so we can classify the motor part of the nervous system or of the peripheral nervous system into a part that innervates skeletal muscles, and this is called somatic nervous system, and two part that innervates involuntary organs, and this is the autonomic nervous system. So the autonomic nervous system, which is the system that innervates the involuntary organs, is part of the motor nervous system, which is part of the peripheral nervous system. All right? And this autonomic nervous system could be classified into sympathetic nervous system and the system that is parallel to this system, which is called the parasympathetic nervous system. And sympathetic nervous system is also called the fight or flight nervous system, because this is the system that is more active or predominant or taking the upper hand when you are in a fight. Okay, when you are in doing exercise or when you are during stress. Okay, this sympathetic nervous system take the upper hand. Okay, but parasympathetic is a system that is predominant when you are at rest. Okay, so this is called the system of rest and digest. Okay, now we're going to discuss the main differences between sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So let's get started. Okay, first of all, we have to know the neurotransmitter of both systems. The main neurotransmitter of sympathetic nervous system is the norepinephrine, okay, or we call it also the noradrenaline, okay. But the main neurotransmitter or the neurotransmitter of parasympathetic nervous system is the acetylcholine, okay, and this is the first difference between this sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, now to discuss the second difference, we have to know something that is very important regarding the nervous system. Okay, this is the brain with the spinal cord, and that what we call the central nervous system or the CNS. Okay, and this is a nerve which is the somatic nerve. And again, this somatic nerve innervates skeletal muscles. Okay, but let's have a look at this nerve here. This nerve is an autonomic nerve that supplies involuntary organ. Let's suppose that this involuntary organ is the heart. So this autonomic nerve should go to the heart, but this doesn't happen. First, this autonomic nerve, these autonomic nerves don't innervate the organ or the involuntary organs directly. They first innervate other nerves before innervating the intended organ, the intended involuntary organ. There is a relay that happens here to the signal. And the collection of the cell bodies here of these nerves, we call that area the ganglia. So there is a relay in ganglia before supplying the involuntary organ. This is for the autonomic nervous system. And these ganglia divides the nerves or the autonomic nerves to nerves before the ganglia and nerves behind or after the ganglia. So we have a preganglionic nerve and we have also postganglionic nerve. Okay, so this is a very important difference between somatic nerves or somatic nervous system and autonomic nervous system. Okay, for the ganglia of sympathetic nervous system, we find the ganglia near to the spinal cord, and we call it the sympathetic chain. Okay, so we would expect that the preganglionic nerve of sympathetic nervous system, because the ganglia is near to the spinal cord, this preganglionic nerve would be short and the postganglionic nerve would be long. Okay, but for the parasympathetic nervous system, the ganglia of the parasympathetic nervous system is very near to the organ, not to the spinal cord, and it even could be embedded in the organ. So the preganglionic nerve of parasympathetic nervous system is long, but the postganglionic nerve is short. Okay. The last difference between sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system is that where every system is originating from the spinal cord. Okay, our spinal cord is divided into segments. We have cervical, we have thoracic, we have lumbar, and we have sacral. Okay, to remember from which parts or from which segments our sympathetic nervous system originates, we have to remember something that is relating to sympathetic. Sympathetic comes from sympathy, okay? And sympathy comes from the heart. So we would expect that the nerve that is related to sympathetic would come from an area near to the heart, okay? And this thoracic area anatomically is near to the heart. So we would expect that sympathetic nervous system, its nerves would originate from this area. Okay, so sympathetic nervous system nerves originates from the thoracic and lumbar segments of a spinal cord, from this area. So this is that's why we call that sympathetic nervous system is or has a thoracolumbar outflow. Okay, but parasympathetic nervous system nerves comes with the nerves that goes from the brain to the periphery, and from the sacral part of the spinal cord. So we call that flow cranial. Cranial means related to the brain. Sacral, craniosacral. So sympathetic nervous system is thoracolumbar, while parasympathetic nervous system is craniosacral flow. Okay, that was the main differences between sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, and we are going to discuss in the next lecture what is the actions of sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system on our body.